It is already week 6 of season 16 in LFM, and this week I put my Kiwi pride on the line with sprint racing at Bathurst Mount Panorama. Now, as a New Zealand motorsport fan, I have been watching Bathurst for the good part of 2 decades, with the Australian Supercars Championship and the Bathurst 1000. So it's safe to say that I have plenty of prior fan knowledge of this track, and I know exactly where I should be putting the car to produce a decent lap time. However, with using the BMW M4, the official West competition racing car, for the first time this week, there was certainly some new things about the driving that I had to learn. Couple that with the fact that you need to be absolutely millimeter perfect around this place every single lap to produce any sort of competitive time, and racing against other drivers who really love this circuit, I certainly had a challenge on my hands to produce any sort of competitive result and help that ELO rating of mine, which was demolished with the prior Spa Pro Series race. Am I able to put it all together, and can I hold my head high at the end of this week? Well, let's jump in and find out. So, a quick recap of my first LFM race at Bathurst, because this one didn't go particularly well for me. We are starting out of position 19 with door car number 22, a strong field here in this 27 car field. We get through turn 1 nice and clean, side by side with a few other cars, and I'm able to hang on for a few laps with these guys at the pace, but certainly there were some quick drivers here. Managed to take a knock out of Forest Elbow, getting some damage there, and on lap number 6, the BMW coming up inside into turn 1, but the Ferrari behind collecting me a little bit there, so the damage was certainly starting to rack up. With 7 minutes to go, we had this moment here, a blocked track with an accident, and I basically squeezed my way past here, but I actually don't recommend doing this. It certainly added up a few incident points, even though I was keen to get a move on in this race. We avoid a spinner on the last lap as well, but to be honest, it was all for nothing, because using the wrong reference lap in my fuel calculator put me a half a lap short on fuel, and we are unable to cross the finish line on this particular race, which was really frustrating. So, time to do things a little bit better. We have 18 degrees for this very fast session at Bathurst, and I'm going to take you on what has been my fastest lap around Bathurst to date, the qualifying session for this particular race. Coming into Hell Corner, turn 1, and we'll carry on with a bit of a track guide on this circuit. As I've said in the intro, this is a track that I have watched many times. We're going to come up now Mountain Straight, the second longest straight on the circuit, up and over the brow of the hill, and then hard on the brakes down to third gear for Griffin's Bend, turn 2. And you can get hard on the accelerator, use a lot of that exit curb on the other side there, up into turn 3 and 4, the cutting. Full throttle fourth gear, down to second, get it turned in and use the hill to slow the car down. Now flat on the accelerator, third gear, fourth gear under the tree as we come up into Reed Park. Don't touch that inside curb, run it out to that outside wall, change up to fifth gear, down into the grate, and if you get it right, flat through here. I don't get it right, unfortunately. A little lift and then full throttle through McPhillamy Park, and then the run down Skyline here, drop it back to fourth and third over that inside curb, hug the wall, and then little brake to get it into the dipper there, hard out the other side, get it up to fourth gear, a little short shift before the kink before Forest Elbow, down to second once the car's squared up, get it turned in, and then full gas, full throttle, down Conrod Straight, the fastest piece of racetrack in Australia. Now the Supercar Series will go near 300 kilometers down here, but the additional aero on the GT3 car means you don't get that fast down this piece of track. Move it over to the left, use that extra piece of racetrack through the chase, square the car up, hard brakes down to third gear, float it over that inside apex and out the other side, continuing full throttle, use that exit curb a little bit, and now you're down to Murray's Corner, the final corner of the circuit. Down to second gear, get it turned in, and you're out the other side under the bridge there to complete a lap of Bathurst. For me, a 201.422, and that sits me at this stage P9 on this session. But we're going to carry on here because I immediately take up 2/10 out of the first corner, and as you see, I'm checking the timetable to see what that car in front of me is doing lap time wise, but unfortunately his previous best 2:04 meant that it was very likely I was going to catch him in this lap.
we come through Griffin's Bend once more and we get ourselves near 3/10 up on this lap and into the cutting again. This was a corner that I was slowly getting more confident, trying to get a bit deeper into these corners, and we come out the other side of that 4/10 up, flirting with a sub 201 second lap. But as we come up through Reed Park and down into the Great once more, this BMW, he gets this corner a little bit long and I do catch him at a really awkward part of the track. He does brake to let me by, but that 4/10 advantage disappears in that moment and we're unable to improve on that lap. So starting up P11 after that session, we're just going to try and come up with a nice clean start to this race and see if we can't make a few positions through it. The start of the previous race was down from P19, so I was really hopeful to move up a couple of spots and maybe pick up a top 10 here. Immediately we get one position with that McLaren heading off to the left there, and as we come up Mountain Straight for the first time, I have this Ford on my inside of me. He's got tons of grunt, so he easily powers through there, and I'm able to, with the space behind, take the normal racing line through Griffin's Bend for the first time. Trying to be nice and safe here. This BMW, he's having a little sniff down the inside at the cutting. It's not a place you want to try and go too wide. Something that I had noticed through my real life watching of Bathurst races. And we come up the other side on cold tyres over the mountain for the very first time. A little gap in front and a little gap behind, so I can certainly take it at my own pace. As I said, I'm trying to be really cautious here. I don't want to pick up damage on this first lap. BMW behind, he tags the wall as we come down towards McPhillamy Park and then over Skyline on the first racing lap of this race. Such iconic images of the cars going down here, and I certainly can't get over how good some of the replays are in ACC, showing these corners, showing the beautiful livery on this BMW through that section of track. Down to Forest Elbow for the first time. I'm still on the back of this Ford here. Come out the other side, we're down Conrod Straight for the first time in this race. Nice and safe, no damage, we can carry on with this 25-minute race. As we start the second flying lap here, the Ford, he gets a run on the Ferrari in front and he's going to take the inside line through Hell Corner. It leaves the Ferrari on the outside and gives me a bit of a run on him as we head up Mountain Straight. Pull it out of the slipstream, but as the Ford moves back over and the Ferrari picks up his slipstream, unfortunately the Ferrari gets a little bit extra speed and the BMW doesn't have enough grunt to get up on the inside there, so we go back to the normal racing line. The Ferrari, he goes long though at Griffin's Bend, and that gives me a chance to go back up the inside, but as I mentioned from the first lap, we do not want to go 2x2 through the cutting, so we pull back in. He tags the outside wall on the cutting, that Ferrari in front, so there's a little bit of pressure on him. But as we come up the hill, I make a little mistake through the first turn out of the cutting there, and it gives him a little bit of space in front, so we fall in behind. At 17 minutes to go though on lap number 4, the Ferrari, he gets it all wrong into Forest Elbow, collides that inside then outside barrier, and we're able to inherit that P10 top 10 position with 17 minutes to go. And then things start to settle down a little bit for me in this race. We're coming through the chase now here on lap number 5, and we're on a pretty good lap here for me, but as you can see, there's 3 seconds to the car in front, and I've managed to put 7 seconds into the cars behind me. This was going to become a little bit of a trend of the races here, and what I was finding out was that the people that were tackling Bathurst were certainly people that enjoyed the circuit. So I'm going to come through for a 202 flat, but you can see on the timing the cars in front are nicely settled in the 201s. While I was having plenty of pace on the cars behind me, the cars in front were just that tiny bit quicker and a little bit more comfortable at race pace around here. As we come through with 3 minutes and 50 seconds to go, you can see that rings true with 8 seconds now up to that Ford in front and a full 10 seconds to the Mercedes behind me. But we are starting to see little flashes of drama up ahead here of a car that's a little bit out of race pace. And what we end up finding is that the number 4 Ferrari has had a fair old moment through the cutting, and he's now struggling with front end damage as he comes down the hill, and at my race pace I'm catching him at a pretty rapid rate of knots. Very fortunately for me, he manages to pull over just before Forest Elbow, and I'm able to get by there. He's certainly very wounded, and we're able to move up and inherit P9 position in this race with just a few laps left to go. And those 2 laps do then pass, and we come down Conrod Straight for the last time in this race. 11 seconds to the car in front and 13 seconds to the car behind as we come through the chase with this beautiful helicopter shot here. It was a solid race for me, and the big up was that I managed to do a clean race. There is no damage on this car. Picked up a few positions from that P11 starting position, and getting inside the top 10 of a pretty healthy field was a really good result for me, considering some of the pretty less than ideal start to the week that I had in race 1. So we gained some elo, gained some safety rating, and we can move on to some more races. A similar story here on this next race at Bathurst. Some quick highlights for you. I've started in P12 with my teammate Leighton up there in P5, a full 1.3 seconds faster than me in qualifying, although not a great qualifying for me with some traffic involved. We do hang on for a few laps here after picking up 1 position at the start and pick up another position with the door card number 4 Aston Martin taking a spill over Skyline there, moving ourselves up to P10, but once again we kind of find ourselves in a bit of no man's land. You see, I do a really good job of almost trying to end my race with 5 minutes to go, tagging that inside wall coming into Forest Elbow, but once again we found ourselves 7 seconds behind the next car up the road, holding 2.5 seconds over the P11 Lamborghini, and a nice little solid top 10 for us once again with just a small amount of damage on the car. But fortunately, I get thrown a lifeline here at the end of the week, a split 2 race here at Bathurst. Now, all the other results have been in split 1 fields, and certainly those top guys were significantly quicker than me, particularly over a full distance. While I was improving, it wasn't enough to really mix it up with the middle or top part of the top 10 at all. But we get a door card number 1 here, just sneaking in to split 2, and so I really needed to take this one seriously and try and get a result for this one. Now, as you see, it was our second flying lap here on qualifying. We're a 3/10 up on our already best lap of the session, a 2:02.3, as we come through the chase now, and we find more time through this next sequence of corners to see if I can't put down a marker that others cannot beat. It's 23-degree track temperatures for this race, and this is exactly how the practice servers were all week. So everyone in this race knew exactly what to expect from this track. We go 5.5 tenths up, and I put myself down a 201.855. Pretty solid, but there's definitely more time in it. Unfortunately, I was trying a little bit too hard to eke out that time, particularly over the hill here. I was 2.5 tenths up on this next flying lap, but a tag of the wall before McPhillamy Park and pushing too hard down through the dipper means I basically lost all of that advantage, and same again here at Forest Elbow. A little bit too hard, scrubbing a bit too much speed off with some understeer, and we negate any advantage for that particular lap. And it's the same again on the very last lap. With no seconds left on the clock, I am just on my personal best, and it is an Aston Martin that has put in a slightly better lap by just a tenth, but unfortunately I'm trying too hard to make up that time and I'm unable to find it through this session. A front row start though, and we are going to try and put some pressure on, see if we cannot take a win here. If not, holding on to a podium, which would be a nice way to end a week's racing here at Bathurst. We get the green light and we go side by side with the Aston Martin down into turn 1, second gear, hanging around the outside. It's nice and clean from both of us, and that does put us side by side up Mountain Straight for the very first time. The Aston Martin's got a little bit more torque than the BMW, the V8 of the Aston Martin, outpowering the straight 6 of the BMW by a tiny bit. So he's got the nose in front, but I have the inside line. He manages to hang around the outside of Griffin's Bend really well, and he's still got the nose in front as we make our way up to the cutting. Once again, I'm not willing to go side by side through this corner, so we fall in behind into that P2 position, and then the Aston gets a nice little run out of the cutting and opens up a little bit of a gap for me. The Ferrari behind, he's nice and close. He had a decent start as well, but the BMW is pretty strong over the mountain here, and once again I'm trying to be quick but make no mistakes. That's the first point of call on lap 1 here on cold tyres. Through McPhillamy, a little lift, but we managed to get through there as well, and over Skyline for the first time in this race. Don't quite get the line right coming in, but we managed to hold on here. down through the dipper. Ferrari's right on my tail, a little bit long in the dipper there, but we are surviving, and that's the main thing through this first lap. Down to Forest Elbow now, get it tucked in, out the other side, and I've got just enough of an advantage over the Ferrari to not be concerned going down Conrod Straight. Certainly nice the extra grunt of the BMW coming out of corners like that, particularly with knowing how the Ferrari works under not great acceleration, something that I've struggled with when racing in the Ferrari myself. Down through the chase for the first time in this race, hard on the brakes, getting it stopped. Ferrari, he's definitely sniffing behind, so I'm really trying to nail these next few exits so then I can just focus on the Aston Martin in front of me. Down to Murray's Corner for the first time in this race. Nicely through there in second gear, good exit, and I do open up that little gap to the Ferrari behind, and we can focus forward on this Aston Martin. A couple laps into this race now, and as you can see, I have managed to pull out a little gap on the P3 car behind, with the Aston Martin just over a second in front, but I am eyes forward at this point. However, as we come down Conrod here for lap number 4, and we're going to get into the chase, someone has knocked away the 100-meter braking board in the chase there, and this has mostly been our braking marker for this particular braking zone. The Aston Martin, he goes long on the braking, as a result has to cut across the grass, and I was a bit concerned with how the rejoin was going to be here. I'd seen plenty of terrible moments with the rejoin there in real life, so it was a bit of a lift, and he squeezes me a bit on this braking zone into the final turn, but it has diminished his advantage, and I'm now able to put some pressure right on the rear bumper of this Aston Martin. We come into turn 1, and I'm going to try and get in the slipstream here and see if I can't make something of it. We're coming to the chase now on the next lap, and once again he's a little bit desperate trying to get the car stopped, so I've got a tiny advantage once again, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to continue to put some pressure on here. Show the nose a little bit just to show that I'm right there. It doesn't put him off at all, and we come through the final turn once again. Coming over the hill now on lap number 8, and as you can see, he's managed to skip away a tiny little bit there. I have been going pretty well over the top of the hill though, and it has been allowing me to get a little bit closer on each lap, but it's been the bottom of the mountain that has been my biggest struggle so far. Coming down here also to show a 3/10 up on my best, flashing purple there as potentially going to be the fastest lap of the race so far. And actually at the bottom of the hill here, we've found a little bit more time on him, and I go a 2:01.995 at race pace. That is my fastest racing lap to date, so I am starting to find some time in this BMW in all the conditions. The Aston Martin into turn 1 went a bit wide there, but unfortunately I light up the rears trying to get on the accelerator and make an advantage of it, so it turns into a neutral situation, which was a shame. That was potentially my best opportunity to look at overtake. And even coming into the cutting here, I was getting a lot more confident, closing in on the brakes in that corner, and just doing my absolute best to put pressure on this Aston Martin. Because every time I did, there was a tiny little moment, little glimmers of hope that I would be able to challenge for the lead of this race. And it was just about trying to stay out of trouble myself and put that pressure on and see if I can't force an error at all. However, he was doing a really good job at holding his own, even with me right on the rear bumper here, and so it was going to be very, very difficult to come up with a pass on him. And as we come into the end of lap number 10 with 4.5 minutes to go, he's done a really good job to get away. A poor lap for me on that particular lap. He's a couple of seconds up the road now, and in fact what I was starting to realise was that the P3 car behind, a McLaren that had done a little bit of passing during the race, was beginning to come up at a good rate of knots on us. As we start the final lap, he is right there on the rear bumper. I get a little slide out of the exit of turn 1. I was really worried the McLaren had a better exit, only 0.3 behind in the slipstream. Relying here on some BMW grunt to get me up mountain straight. He's not quite close enough to go for a move, so I don't tend to worry. He does close in under brakes once more, but fortunately I'm able to get through that bend nicely, but this needs to be a really good run over the mountain if I'm going to create any sort of advantage to take away his opportunity coming down Conrod. We come out of the cutting for the last time in this race, and this is a section that I actually get probably better than I had all race. So under pressure, I was really able to put this one together. Coming down into the grate, I managed to keep it flat on the run up through Reed Park into McPhillamy Park. Again, basically flat through McPhillamy, and I'm able to create a little gap as the McLaren had a tiny moment coming out of the grate there. Down over Skyline, down through the dipper, and we're able to punch out a tiny advantage now as we come towards Forest Elbow. No risk now as we come to Forest Elbow with about a second over that P3 car. Out the other side, and it leaves me with just a couple of braking zones to tidy off this race and a solid P2 for me. Up and over the brow now for that last time. As you can see, that second advantage still remains a bit out of the slipstream there, so there really is no pressure, and we've been beginning to work out this braking zone even without the braking board there. Out the other side, finding a little bit more time, and actually I'm going to come through for a pretty solid last lap here, which I was pretty happy with considering we're at the end of the stint, and this whole race was probably one of the fastest races I'd done all week. The clear air certainly helping that, but a 202.392 to finish this race. In P2, strong final lap, good solid performance, and a nice way to round out some racing here at Bathurst in LFM.
So there we are, we survived a week of sprint racing at Bathurst. And after the first shocker of a race in race 1, I learned the lessons on being careful around this track to not lose further safety rating, and it ended up being quite a successful week for me. I had 3 top 10s in split 1 races, and that nice split 2 podium to finish it off really gave me some good confidence around this track, particularly using the BMW and LFM racing for the first time. It's safe to say the BMW handled the track really well. It was really confident over the top of the mountain, and was a little bit safer in some of those key braking zones into the cutting and Forest Elbow, which we saw the Ferrari struggling with during the week. Now, it's certainly not the end of the use of the Ferrari for me, as you'll see in coming weeks, but it was nice to get a bit of a handle on the BMW, considering it is the car that we'll be using in the team's racing for special events in the future. Now, my teammates are still significantly faster than me, so there's a lot of work to do, but it was nice to get through at least 1 week of racing without major incident, to at least have a platform to build off in future weeks. A big shout out as well to a couple of Kiwis, Ed and Rick, who I was racing with one of the midweek races. Unfortunately, I don't have the driving footage of it, but Ed gave me a really good push along in the middle of that race, and was awesome racing with a couple more Kiwis, and we had an awesome chat afterwards as well. So I look forward to racing against you guys soon. Would love to hear how your Bathurst races went, if you did some of those during week 6. And if you want to see more of my LFM racing, then please subscribe to the channel. There's plenty more coming up. As always, let me know in the comments how you think I've gone. Rate my performance. Can I hold my head high? Can I hold on to some Kiwi pride after taking on realistically what is my home track in ACC? And as always, guys, race hard, stay positive, and we'll see you all again very soon for another video. Cheers.